Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And today, we are taking a little bit of a break from the early off-season preview series because there has been some news in the league. A trade has gone down, and folks, it's none of the trades that were being hinted at before, right? No movement on any of the other um, big trades that had rumors going around. This is basically entirely different. A trade between the Atlanta Hawks and the Utah Jazz was announced earlier today. We'll throw the old Woj tweet up on the screen right now. Basically, the format of the trade is the Atlanta Hawks will be receiving Rudy Gay and a second round pick. When that pick is not specified as of yet, just as a future second, last time I checked. In the meantime, the Utah Jazz will receive John Collins from the Hawks, which, um, when I first saw that announcement, I had to check that a couple of times because at first glance, that trade seems a little bit weird to me, and honestly, it is. It's a little bit of a strange exchange, but we'll get into the reasons why this is going down in just a little bit because I do want to cover one little bit of admin here with this trade. It is being noted that to make this trade happen, Rudy Gay had to exercise a player option, a $6.4 million player option. Because of that, because of when he exercised that option and NBA rules and whatnot, um, this trade technically can't actually formally go through until July 6th. So that leaves some time for the teams to potentially back out or renegotiate or do all sorts of stuff with the trade. So technically speaking, this could change. But for now, this is the structure that we're working with. The Hawks will get Rudy Gay in a second rounder. The Jazz will get John Collins. So with that out of the way, we'll talk about the actual trade itself. We'll start on the side of the Atlanta Hawks because I'm sure there's a lot of people wondering why did they make this trade. The answer is they're trying to clear some space here. John Collins was going to make $25.3 million this season, so this is mostly a salary dump for them. It's a salary dump that I think is very much calculated from the Hawks. They looked up and down their roster. They realized we're flirting with that luxury tax threshold. And with the changes to the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, the penalties for crossing that threshold, are going to be significantly higher. They're going to hurt a team a lot more, and that's something that the Hawks want to avoid. So they wanted to make a little space. They wanted to have a little bit of wiggle room underneath that threshold, not be either over it or butting up right against it. So they look at John Collins, and what they see is not a statistical profile that they liked, right? Not going to go over the specific numbers, but I do want to point out for some of his stats in the last season, he had his lowest points per game average since his rookie season, the lowest rebounds per game of his entire career. He was tied for the lowest assists per game in his entire career. He had the lowest field goal percentage and 3-point percentage in his career, and the fewest free throw attempts per game since his rookie season. So he wasn't really scoring points. He wasn't rebounding as much as he was before. He wasn't getting assists. He wasn't shooting as well. The efficiency was down. And he wasn't even making up for it by getting to the foul line as a big man because his free throw attempts were down as well. So everything that you would have wanted John Collins for outside of just defense regressed in this last season. And of course, there does seem to be a pretty solid reason for that, right? If you look at the lineup here for the Hawks, you start to wonder, hey, where did some of these opportunities for John Collins go? Well, the answer is they went into Dejounte Murray's hands, right? The Hawks went out and acquired another young, talented, exciting guard. Now they've got this Trae Young, Dejounte, yeah, Dejounte Murray duo to work with, and they kind of want to build around that, right? They put the resources in, they made that trade happen. Now they want to maximize that window and put all of their focus onto that too, which means John Collins' place kind of disappears, especially when you also consider that the Hawks already have Clint Capella. on the roster. And Clint Capella is on a slightly cheaper, slightly shorter deal. He's making a couple million less than John Collins. Clint Capella's contract does not have the player option attached to the end of it like Collins's did. But other than that, relatively similar guys and relatively similar contracts, right? Now, Capella's offense is not massive by any means. That's not really his forte, whereas John Collins previously was looked at as more of an offensive threat. But if Collins's numbers were going down in the way that we just outlined a minute or two ago, well, he's the one to be moved. He's the quote-unquote weakest link here for the Hawks. Why not save some space under the luxury tax threshold and work with the one big that you have who's defensive and rebounding focused, right? So the idea here was, originally the plan was on the offense, we're going to have Trae Young, we're going to have John Collins. That's our inside out. That's our 1-2 punch. And we're going to surround that with defenders and shooters. And obviously that did not get them massively far. So instead they go after Murray. They bring him in. The entire face of the offense has to change. And John Collins now no longer has a place within that offense, as we saw with his numbers from the last season. So let's trade him. Let's save some money, right? And you take a look at the comparison between the two. Collins is going to make $25.3 million. Rudy Gay, his contract is $6.4 million. So $19 million or so difference there for the Hawks to take off their books and get under that luxury tax threshold. So for them, it's unfortunate, but it's a cost-saving move. Looking at it from the Jazz's perspective, Danny Ainge strikes again. I mean, they send out Rudy Gay in a second-round pick. Okay, that's, I mean, that's whatever. No, I mean, no offense to Rudy Gay. The man's been around for a long time. He's a vet, and in his prime, he was a man who could score at will. But now he's 36 years old. His contract was only worth $6.4 million. So if you're the Utah Jazz, you don't care about losing that, really, right? Gay was not a massive part of the team, so they can afford to lose him. They can afford to lose a second rounder because they got all of those picks from when they traded Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. So the war chest is full. They can afford to let a second rounder sort of slip through the cracks if it means getting a player like John Collins. And the Jazz can very much afford Collins, right? The team is massively under the cap. I think right now their lineup's projected to be like less than 100 million, and the cap is going to be somewhere in the 130 something million range. So they can absorb this contract and be just fine. And maybe even more than just fine, right? Because now you take a look at what the Jazz have to work with in terms of their lineup. You've got John Collins in your front court, and the guy who's going to be playing next to him is Lauri Markkanen, right? Most improved player, got to win the award. Not with the team currently, so he probably got the news. He went back to his home country. He's doing his military service over the summer, but he's got to be excited over there in Eastern Europe, because you just got John Collins not quite for free. Again, we're not going to insult Rudy Gay at this point. You know, he has earned that respect, but for very little. The price was extremely low, and now you have Collins and Markkanen as your big men down low, while also still having Walker Kessler, a very young player, a guy who was not actually a threat to win Rookie of the Year last season. That storyline kind of got blown a little bit too much out of proportion. I really don't think he had too much of a legitimate chance there. But he was earning attention as a rookie, and I think that's the thing to focus on here, right? The fact that he was able to make contributions to a Jazz team right off the bat. He was not the first option like Paolo Banchero was in Orlando, but anytime you've got a young guy who can come in and immediately find his place in your roster and start making a contribution of any kind, you're doing pretty solidly for yourself here, and you are going to be able to continue helping that team over the long term. So the Jazz now have Collins, Markkanen, and Kessler as their stable in that sort of power forward center group. They're probably going to go looking for or re-sign maybe one or two more guys in there just so that you have a little bit more of a rotation. But the Jazz look a lot better now. They've made some serious improvements. They had to spend basically no draft capital, just a second rounder, and then shipped out one veteran player in Gay. And this move really doesn't seem to have any actual consequences for the Jazz. The money is fine. The assets that they had to get rid of are ones that they are okay with getting rid of. And you get back some solid stuff in exchange. And this is the way that the NBA works sometimes, right? All this talk about trades, you got fans out there who are always talking about my team should trade for this guy or this, that, or the other. The old meme about like Iman Shumpert, Tristan Thomas, and Thompson and the Nets first round pick that got thrown around for every single star player ever. But those aren't the trades that happen. The trades where you say my team should trade for an all-star player and we should give up like 50 cents and some pocket lint. Those don't happen, but these trades do. Trades like this where you find a team like Atlanta who have a situation that needs to be resolved, right? They needed to make, or felt like they needed to make space. They wanted to get under that luxury tax threshold. So they have to give up a very good player in John Collins for extremely little because of their own circumstances. And that's where teams like the Jazz get in here and accelerate their own rebuilding process. It's not always about outsmarting your opponents, right? In terms of these trades, it's not about quote unquote fleecing the other team. It's about identifying when that team has a weakness in their lineup through means that aren't fully in their control, right? The Hawks did not decide where the new luxury threshold was going to be. The Hawks did not decide on the new provisions in the CBA, but they're the ones who have to deal with it. They're the ones who have to get under that threshold. So the Jazz say, hey, they need to get rid of a good player because of circumstances slightly outside of their control. We take advantage of it. We get a guy who we think can help us for extremely little. Those are the kinds of deals that help you differentiate a good front office versus a bad one, right? A bad one will go chasing a big name and trade all of their own assets away for a guy just because he's the guy that he is. Good front offices will do this. They'll identify when another team has a pressure point. And as I said, sort of Danny Ainge strikes again. He is extremely good at finding those scenarios. So the Jazz get John Collins. The Hawks get the space that they wanted. Rudy Gay in a second. I don't even know if Rudy Gay is going to factor into the Hawks lineup here at all. I assume he is going to play for them, but his minutes will probably be pretty low. As we mentioned, he is still 36 years old. He is kind of in the, I guess we'd say, twilight of his career. That isn't to say that he can't help. The man still does, have the touch. He can shoot, he can score, but with this team having Trae Young and Dejounte Murray handling the ball the vast majority of the time, I think Gay's probably going to be a small piece off the bench at the most here. But if you can be a small piece off the bench for a Hawks team that improves and makes a playoff run, well, maybe that's looking pretty good for him as well. But we'll have to see. For now, though, that is going to be the trade. So let me know what you think. Do you like John Collins on the Jazz? Do you think the Hawks should have held on to him and just maybe dealt with the financial repercussions? What are we looking at here? Should the Hawks have gotten more out of this? Should they have tried to push for a first rounder or a different player, something of that nature? Let me know your thoughts. But for now, that is it. Collins to the Jazz, Gay in a second rounder to the Hawks. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.